Cortland Simmons with you here on the 10th day of August in the year of our Lord 2018. Click on that subscribe button and or the like button at CS Racing. I had to change it a little bit from CS TV because there is another CS TV out there in the cyber world. And so therefore we've modified it a little bit and we now have a CS TV deal going. Right now this week what we're going to do is recap the Whitney Handicap and take a look at where the players from that race, where they stand in terms of their Breeders' Cup options, and obviously the races leading up to the Breeders' Cup, which will be crucial in their preparation for the World Championships to be held at Churchill Downs, the home of the Kentucky Derby, along with an early Travers preview. Now, if you listen to a previous podcast and you've been browsing the web at different outfits with their presentations, previews, recaps, and forecasting for the upcoming big events, it's pretty clear that there is no clarity or that it's still a little murky as far as the three-year-old picture goes, especially on the male side of the ledger, in lieu of Justify's retirement from racing, which was announced on the 25th of July, about 3 or 4 days prior, a couple days prior to the Curlin Stakes won by Hofberg, and 3 days prior to Tenfold narrowly edging both Flame Away and Vino Rosso in the Jim Dandy, and then of course 4 days on July 29th that precluded his retirement, precluded the Haskell, which was won by Good Magic over Bravazzo, with Lone Sailor third and Core Beliefs fourth. So the figures were not very impressive. If you look at the times, it was 150.10 for Good Magic, in winning by almost 5 lengths, a 150.49 for Tenfold in the Jim Dandy, where he drifted in the stretch, and Vino Rosso, who seemed to be hopelessly beaten in the mid-stretch, running in spots is what we would call it, came on very, very strongly at the end to almost get the second spot, the place spot, from Flame Away, in a race in which Tenfold used more pace-pressing tactics. And you can listen to the recap of those races on the previous podcast, but that's a quick synopsis of what happened in those races. Tenfold did not look like the standard bearer for going 10 furlongs based on these slightly new tactics. His run in the Preakness, where he came from behind off the pace, in which Justify and Good Magic, put together what was really a match race, and for all intent and purposes was a more ideal strategy for Tenfold. He came from off the pace, finished very strongly. The tactics that you need in a longer race like the Belmont, where you need to be tactical but at the same time must possess the ability to make a run. Therefore, you need to be able to have the stamina along with the speed and turn of foot to make multiple runs. Didn't serve him as well. Him or Bravazzo, who just nipped him at the wire for the place spot in the Preakness when he finished third in Baltimore. It just didn't work out for him. Now, cutting back in distance, or since the Belmont Stakes, Tenfold ran strategically a race that played to the hand that was dealt to him in the Jim Dandy, with Flame Away being the speed in the race, and there not being a whole lot of burners in there. So in a way, strategically, it's a way to develop some versatility for the horse. I'm not so sure if that's going to be the best measure, the best strategy for him, the best way to tactically go about winning a Grade 1 like the Travers, and subsequently any prep that he may have prior to the Breeders' Cup. So right now the whole division is in a quandary. Bravazzo ran, he was second best in the Haskell, as I alluded to in the previous piece. When you look at the times, once again, 150.10 for Good Magic, 159.54 for 150.49 for Tenfold, in narrowly beating Flame Away and Vino Rosso, and a 150.18 for Hofberg on an off-track in the Curlin that kicked off the whole sort of pre-Travers festival. And he ran on a track that was off, that had been favoring speed all day, so you had to be impressed by the fact that he beat what was, basically, to be quite, blunt about it, an allowance field. So right now there isn't a whole lot of, there's a lot of interest, but there certainly isn't superstar quality just yet. What are we going to get in the Travers? Right now, the 3-year-old division without Justify is about as straight as a bag of chips. So what you have is a situation which it's a competitive race. I think that Hofberg and Good Magic will battle in the odds for favoritism. There's going to be a lot of money taken at the windows. Now, based on training patterns and the savviness of the audience out there, not only in New York and Saratoga per se, but around the world, now that you have the internet and you have a lot more connection in terms of being able to find information, just like Guggenheim with the press. That was, the mother lode of the breakthrough in terms of being able to distill information way back centuries ago in a timely manner, at least for those times, that would, better inform the world. And now we've, of course, made quantum leaps with the internet. So there's going to be those savvy types that are going to be looking at whether it be XBTV workouts, looking at things on the internet in print as well as visually, and make some, pre-race prognostications and perhaps change their views if in fact Vino Rosso, if there's a hunch out there or a group of hunches by committee that believe Vino Rosso or Tenfold or some other horse. Gronkowski is also being pointed for the Travers despite the inactivity and not having a prep going in. He's going to try to do what Tappert did in 2017, which is to come in off the Belmont Stakes. Tappert would have won that race in 2017 over Irish Warcry, the embattled or the erratic Irish Warcry. And he trained up to that race for Todd Pletcher, and he ran a credible fourth. So maybe Chad Brown believes that there can be an improvement, that Gronkowski may be a better horse, or may be able to. He's certainly not going to run in there to not be viable. That's not the hope. You don't want to go into a Grade 1 like the Midsummer Derby and try to finish fifth. So it'll be very interesting to see, because there's no time now for Gronkowski to get a prep. So it'll be interesting not only to see the Patriot star tight end, for which hence Gronkowski's name comes from, but how he'll actually perform if he's able to be fortunate enough to be loaded in to make it to the starting gate for the Travers. It's a mixed bag right now without Justified, no question about it. I think that a lot of people are really curious as to see, are we going to get a race in which no one really moves the meter or creates a continental shift, where the Richter scale just basically goes off the charts, where we see more than one horse perform very admirably. Will we see that? Or are we going to see a race in which, as I said before, nobody does what I aforementioned, cause, some sort of a tremor out there or an aftershock with their performance in the Travers? Are we going to see a race in which, it's close, but, do we have by committee a great group of 3-year-olds that's going to build momentum as the older horses step back? That's usually the key. Either you have a tremendously weak, from beginning to end, a weakened group of older horses, in combination, what I call a perfect storm, with a great group of 3-year-olds. You have that in 89. 89, you had some decent older horses, but there was nothing coagulated. Nothing really came together, and there was just nobody on the superstar level or even showed enough flashes of brilliance to suggest that they could jump up and run a big race to beat horses like, Easy Goer and Sunday Silence. So, and Easy Goer really did do a number on waxing off a number of the top older horses in the Woodward and the Jockey Club Gold Cup, and prior to his Travers win in 89, a comprehensive win in the Whitney against older horses. That was his prep. So are we going to have a situation that's what you have to hope for as a 3-year-old, or you see a situation like in 2000 where Lemon Drop Kid had a great year going up against the likes of Barons and some of his 3-year-old counterparts from the year before, and he just tailed off. The Woodward was kind of where the wheels were starting to spin off, and by the time we got to the Jockey Club, transmission starts to go awry, and when we get to the Breeders' Cup and all those top 3-year-olds that I've aforementioned many times, Fusaichi Pegasus, who finished 6th that day, was the favorite. The Kentucky Derby winner had not had a lot of activity, and it cost him, because the other 3-year-olds steadily improved and really showed tremendous, brute strength at the end of the year. You had Captain Steve, who finished 3rd that day, Albert the Great, the winner of the Jockey Club, who dusted off, Lemon Drop Kid previous in upstate New York with that great performance, running the fastest 3-year-old, fastest mile and a quarter for a 3-year-old in the history of the Gold Cup. I think it was a 1:59.4, somewhere in that ballpark, just an off the charts performance. And, he finished 4th, nosed out by Captain Steve. And, of course, we all know about the top 2 finishers, Tisnow and Giants Causeway. Tisnow had lost to Captain Steve in the Swap Stakes earlier that summer, ran 2nd against older horses, where Skimming was kind of uncontested on the lead in the Pacific Classic, and then he started to really improve. You know, winning the Super Derby, beating Captain Steve in a thrilling Goodwood, and then subsequently beating Giants Causeway, winner of 5 straight Group 1s in Europe, by Stormcat, trained by Aidan O'Brien, ridden by Mick Kinane. Just a fantastic race, great group of 3-year-olds running 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, Fusaichi running 6. And that was a case in point where the older horses stepped back a little bit. That's what you're going to have to hope for, or a situation like Skip Away, like similar to Barron's in 1999 when he kind of tailed off on an off track, and River Keen, trained by Bob Baffert, had won the Woodward previous, and subsequently, you know, he went on and won the Gold Cup, winning both, you know, those top 2 races in New York prior to the Breeders' Cup, knocking off Stephen Godeving and Lemon Drop Kid, who was a 3-year-old in 1999, one of the top 3-year-olds in that great group, previous to 2000 and what I just talked about. And you know, River Keen, you know, Barron's is, you know, James Bond. That's right, James Bond, not Sean Connery or Timothy Dalton or Pierce Brosnan, but there is a trainer named James Bond or Jim Bond, call him James Bond, actually made a stable logo 007 because of all the James Bond references. You know, in his post-race comments, you know, it took Barron's a while to get a hold of the track, and he guaranteed everyone at Gulfstream Park the horse would run much better. But at that point, as I said before, like Lemon Drop Kid, you know, transmission, water pump, fuel pump, you know, thermostat, just everything just went, you know, dead on him. And you know, you run a code check on that horse, and there was just nothing left. And you know, that's what you have to hope for. Regression like what you saw with Barron's in 99, Lemon Drop Kid in 2000, something like that. Because right now, when you compare the times and the Beyer speed figures, and keep in mind, I didn't mention the Beyers. Let's take a look at those. Good Magic got a 98 in the Haskell. He has never been one to light up the tote board on his Beyers. Now, it could be argued that in the Bluegrass, prior to his second place to Justify, that he was able to gear down a little bit. That's something you want. You want to conserve energy and not worry about your time and relevance to being able to be effective and to win. So that could be the argument that could suffice when it comes to Good Magic in the Haskell. But you have to be a little concerned, not only going into the Travers. People are wondering if he can get 1.25 miles, despite the fact that he has the Curlin pedigree that would indicate that he could. But again, every horse is an individual, and he ran a good second in the Derby, and people are believing off of that and what he did at Monmouth on the Jersey Shore that he should get the 1.25 miles. But he ran a 98 Beyer. And where am I going with this? Obviously, we have, you know, constructed this conversation mainly around the sophomores, with a little bit of mentioning to where they stand and what their chances could be, or how doused their chances are going to be, their prospects are going to be, how doused their prospects are going to be going into the Breeders' Cup.